Mr. Maqdisi, welcome to the program and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Kристиан. Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Let me first ask you about some substance. Why do you think the Assad regime has unleashed yet another massive aerial assault, as we've seen the pictures, and also the US government has severely condemned this, right at a time when there are talks going on in Geneva? Does he still believe that this is something he can win on the ground?
I totally think that the Syrian government is still believing in the security solution for the problem, and any political concession is not in their dictionary yet. But also the international community should update their narrative about the Syrian uprising, and we should know today that it's no longer about Assad. So when you spoke at first of the presentation about the failure in American policy, that's true because they are concentrating on Assad. And what most Syrian wants the international community to concentrate is on Syria and achieving change. So from that point of view, I can tell you, if you want to have a successful policy, you have to know that the Geneva process, it's the fruit of the mutual understanding between Russia and the US. So the fate of the president is no longer on the table, because if you look at the Geneva Communique is not a place where they meet Geneva, the capital. There is elements in this text. If you read it and if you look into it, you will know that the end game is regime change.
Right.
So we need to lessen a bit the personalization of the conflict and concentrate on Syria. And instead of winning by a knockout, the international community can make the Syrian people win through points.
All right, well, let me ask you this, Jihad, because you left your very public position as, let's face it, defending the government's actions. That was your job. Now, what are you saying? That the future of Syria in any kind of peace negotiation must not be about regime change? In other words, that Assad should stay there?
No, I'm saying the Geneva Communique, the substance of Geneva Communique is if we manage to succeed in implementing it, we will have regime change instead of concentrating on the persona of the president and toppling the president.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying.
All right. Let me now ask you, why did you leave? Again, that was your job. You'd been there for, 14 years or so. What made you decide it was untenable?
That's a very important question. Look, I worked as a diplomat for 14 years, and the last year I was a spokesperson of the government. As a civil servant, I felt that Syria is not heading towards the political solution, and I had hopes that the president would take some reformist action, drastic ones, to absorb the shock, to absorb the uprising in the Syrian street, and that didn't happen. In addition to other reasons also, I don't want to talk about it, it's a bit personal, but at the end of the day, I just left and resigned. I no longer belong to this agenda. I belong to the agenda where concessions should be given to the Syrian people, and a partnership should be built in order to absorb the aspiration of the Syrian people.
Right. Let me go back to the idea of what is now the US position. You heard the National Intelligence Director actually say publicly that President Assad has been strengthened by the very chemical weapons deal that he signed last summer with the United States. Does that surprise you that he's been strengthened?
I don't think he's being strengthened. I think he bought some time. Because if you want to fulfill the deal that the UN signed with the government, you need to have a government in place. The government in place means the current political regime in Syria. So he managed to buy time. But this is not the issue. I mean, the tragedy in Syria is not about what type of weapon the Syrian government possesses. People can be killed not through chemical weapon only, can be killed by beheading, by knives, by bullets, by missiles. So I don't know, there is a sort of something inside the Syrian street that they look at it they see it as, excuse me to say it, but a bit hypocritical attitude from the international community.
Well,
I'm sorry to say it.
Okay, let me ask you about your attitude towards this. Let me remind you that back in 2012, you said, and it was broadcast around the world on Syrian state television after the first reports of chemical weapons. Let me play you what you said on Syrian television.
Any stocks of WMD or any unconventional weapon that the Syrian Arab Republic possess would never be used against civilian or against the Syrian people during this crisis at any circumstances, no matter how the crisis would evolve, no matter how.
Now, Jihad Maqdisi, I want to know whether you believed what you said then, that this would never happen, And are you surprised that actually chemical weapons were used by the regime?
Look, regardless, Christina, what I did is I read a ready-made statement issued by the Foreign Ministry. So I'm not a decision maker. I was reading a statement, and that was the position of the Syrian state. So I'm not a minister. I'm a spokesperson.
Did you believe it then?
You can know.
Did you believe it?
That what? That they will not use it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I did believe back then that it will not be used. And if it is used eventually, as we witnessed, I think whoever used it, he should be held accountable.
So do you believe that it was the regime? Well, I understand what you just said. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you believe that it was the regime, as the rest of the world believes?
It's not about believing. It's about fact-finding mission. I mean, if you have the proof and we can prove it,
they did.
Whoever did it should be held accountable, Christina.
Are you satisfied with the fact-finding mission that so far has said that the Syrian regime used chemical weapons?
Yeah, absolutely. If this is the case by experts, absolutely.
Right.
I'm no longer representing the Foreign Ministry.
No,
Christina,
I know. I'm just asking you as a person.
Today, I'm talking as a Syrian, and whoever caused Syrian death should be held accountable, no matter who he is. There is no how to say immunity to anyone for killing.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you?
It shouldn't be the case.
I want you to react to the story that we broke here on CNN several weeks ago of those pictures with the complicity of elements of the Syrian intelligence and security services that showed systematic killing of prisoners and torturing of prisoners by starvation, by strangulation, and other such beatings. Were you shocked by that? What was your response to when you saw those pictures?
Oh, absolutely. It's appalling. I'm shocked. Every bad feeling that you may have, because it could happen to me, to anybody in Syria. But the problem today is we want to achieve the truce first, ceasefire, and then we work on reconciliation. And if we don't achieve transitional justice in Syria, people will not go back to their houses. They will continue fighting and wanting to seek vendetta. Mm-hmm. So the best way to calm people and to put them back to their houses and to their normal lives is to serve justice.
Those pictures, many Syrians have said, this isn't just what happened in the civil war. This has been going on for years. Many Syrians say that many of our people were put into jail and just disappeared, and we never knew what happened to them. We were told they died of natural causes in prison. Did you ever have any inkling, when you were a foreign ministry spokesman, that this kind of systematic torture and killing was going on?
Well, I can tell you we didn't, as a Syrian government, didn't have a brilliant record in human rights. That's a fact. But today, demonizing each other would serve who? Today, we need to put an end for the bloodshed in Syria. And to put this bloodshed end to it, we need to have a political process in place to get rid of people who are implicated in these crimes and to build a new Syria. So to keep describing something that is known by everybody in the region, inside Syria, outside Syria, it will serve nobody. It's demonizing each other and continuing the cycle of violence in the country. So we want to move on, to achieve change in Syria, according to what the Syrian wants.
Jihad Maqdisi, thank you so much for joining me. Look forward to talking to you again.